Shihan Demura sensei was a perfect example of Sosen Shohan. Set an example worth following. Hello, my name is Mike Anderson. I am the last surviving member of the second demonstration team for the Japan Karate Federation, headed by Shihan Fumio Demura and Sensei Dan Ivan. Dan Ivan was responsible for bringing Sensei Demura to America, and they both formed the Japan Karate Federation in Santa Ana, California. There were many others before my time and many more after my time, but one thing was for certain. I was fortunate to be on one of the teams when Sensei Demura was in his prime. Team 2 was special indeed, headed by Makoto Ibushi. He was an awesome competitor. While sparring, he'll come at you like a freight train, and I would know as I had to spar him for his black belt test. But after the total beatdown, he would be the perfect gentleman and friend. And Chuck Lanza, I was his first friend when he moved out from the East Coast just to train with Sensei, and we were bros throughout all the years. Then myself, wondering how it was that in this space and time I came to fit into this exclusive team. All of us were humbled to work with Shihan Demura, the world-renowned two-time Black Belt Hall of Famer and All-Japan champion in the 60s. We traveled to many tournaments performing demonstrations and competing. One of those tournaments was in Joplin, Missouri. None of us knew how long that drive would be, especially non-stop. Even though we were exhausted when we arrived, the adrenaline kicked in and we swept our events and wowed the crowd for the weekend. Then drove home the next day, or so we thought. We broke down outside of Needles where the temperature was soaring to 115 degrees. We must have overheated a half a dozen times. These photos will show you what happens with delirious heat. The Japan Karate Federation was a natural for the Japanese Deer Park in Buena Park, California. Steven Seagal got his first exhibition there with Sensei Demura, then went on to make his mark in Hollywood. Sensei Demura's skill and charisma became something to see all over the United States, Canada, and Mexico. Enough so to catch the eye of the Hilton Hotel people in Las Vegas. Team 1 did its job, and a short time later, the Japan Karate Federation became a lounge show just before Elvis Presley took the stage. Elvis loved having the karate demonstrations as a warm-up to his show. He knew the audience would be fired up. After a year of performing 6 30-minute shows a day, 6 days a week, the first team needed relief. So our team went up there to Vegas and gave them 2 weeks off to recharge their batteries. That was an interesting 2 weeks and a bit surreal for me. One of the maitre d's asked if we wanted to watch Elvis's show. I was a bit hesitant at first, but was easily convinced to slap down $20 for the maitre d', and we all had front row seats. We watched as the chicks went crazy for him, especially when receiving a scarf from the king. What an experience. We went home, and after 3 weeks, it was all over the news. Elvis Presley had passed away. This is where my journey started in the world of karate. It was the spring of 1973, and I was assaulted, big time. I was 20 years old and was bewildered and in shock when driving home. At the stoplight, I turned my head and saw this sign, Karate, the main dojo of the Japan Karate Federation. I didn't know who the teacher was, and I didn't care. I just wanted to know how to fight back. Somehow I knew training here would change my life forever, and it did. I progressed through the ranks normally, and later I was drafted into teaching and demonstrations. Sensei was also world-renowned for his expertise in kobudo weapons, bow, tonfa, nunchaku, kama, and sai. And we wanted more. We wanted to learn iaido, the way of the sword. Nowadays, most people have heard of the Karate Kid franchise. We all watched the symbiotic chemistry between Pat Morita and Sensei Demura. The persona that Miyagi delivered became the premise of the series, highlighting the lessons learned from wax-on, wax-off exercise. That was the underlying trait that exemplified the Bushido ethics throughout all the films of their franchise. Now, back in those days, it was forbidden to teach the art outside of Japan. Sensei Demura broke down those barriers at his own peril with his sensei. But in our case, the wax-on, wax-off duties were born. In trade for learning the iaido, the deal was we would share the duties of picking up after Sensei's Great Dane, which meant the parking lot was cleaned twice a day. Go figure. Anyway, that's where I think the wax-on, wax-off lesson had originated. That became the central theme and later became iconic to this day. Footnote, we did learn the first 5 katas with the sword, long before it became commercialized in every dojo. When Sensei called me to do a cover shot with him for Kick magazine, I first thought he must be crazy. Me? Yes, hurry over. Kick magazine asked him to do a piece on the nunchaku. Sensei wrote the book on nunchaku and taught it to Bruce Lee. I was teaching for the city of Irvine at the time and also Orange Coast College with my assistant Navid Karazi.
Coming in with a punch to the face after the block. A strike to the face. A U-punch. Chop. A chop to the neck. Reverse chop. Spinning chop. Chop again. And to the groin area. Somebody wants to grab you from behind? Come around with left side thrust. Back kick to the face. Coming in. Roundhouse kick. Roundhouse to the face. And to the stomach.
Jackie Long taught classes for the city of Costa Mesa, Gary Pitts for the city of Huntington Beach, and Gary Hollenbeck ran his dojo in Newport Beach. Many years later, while watching The Real Miyagi, I was very pleased to see our cover was on his wall. The bi-yearly World Championships were held at the Long Beach Arena in 1975 and was the ultimate in karate competitions. The pressure was unreal. Never before did we train every night for 2 weeks prior to that demonstration. The focus on our show was precision throughout and to show off the expertise of kobudo weapons. ABC Wild World Sports was there, as we were the intermission show.
And he knew his reputation was on the line. He told me, he goes, that's when I was nervous. He goes, because I knew I had to perform this really well.
Sensei and Makoto were spot on, and the crowd loved them. Chuck and I and Sensei did our usual fight routine to warm up the crowd for the kobudo segment. We did do other things that were fun too. I was so pleasantly surprised when Sensei showed up for my boat launching. We did a demo for the opening of the Riverside Dojo. I was holding the boards for Sensei to demonstrate the power of the chop. Sensei had a 100% breakage rate until that day. Bam! Nothing. Sensei stepped back a little surprised and stepped in again. Bam! Nothing. I called for some backups to help secure me even more. Sensei reeled again. Bam! Nothing. He hit those boards more than a dozen times. I was taking everything he had like a nail being driven into the ground. I wasn't sure how much more I could take, and eventually he shook his head. He turned and bowed and apologized to the crowds for not breaking the boards. There was dead quiet. On display were the Bushido tenets, that moment of dignity even in defeat. He shows us how you should respond when those things happen. Immediately, the crowds broke into a thunderous applause, and there it was, another example worth following. I mentioned earlier the assault I experienced 45 years ago and how that one lousy moment had changed my life and opened up the world of karate to me. After 17 years of putting my gi on, I retired in 1990. It was time to do other things. Many years had passed by when I was called by Navid as he informed me of Sensei's physical decline and how his time was short. I was planning on making a visit the next day when I got a second call hours later that he had passed. Looking back, there was so much good and so much fun, and now it's gone full circle in such a positive way. All the thanks go to this man I see at rest. Thank you, Sensei, for all you did for me and to all the lives that you have touched. Domo arigato gozaimashita, Sensei. You will never be forgotten.